Hi guys, welcome to my little sitting area, my garden. I wanted to share with you a word from the Lord out of Judges. And in Judges, the Israelites don't have king yet. They have judges, right? So, you know the Israelites, if you're a Christian for any amount of time, we know that the Israelites struggled, right? They had served God, and then He did great mighty things for them, and then they forget God, and they start serving other gods, and then God allows other communities of people or the groups of people to come in and take over. Well, that's where we're at here in the book of Judges, chapter 6. And at this time, they just got done with 40 years of peace that Deborah had given them. And that's a cool story if you don't know about Deborah and Jael, who like speared somebody in the head. It's crazy. But this story is about the judge named Gideon. And at this time, of course, the Israelites had it so good for so long that they started serving other gods. And so God allowed the Midians to oppress them. And they oppressed him so much that the Israelites were hiding in caves. The Midianites would come in and they would kill all their livestock. If the Israelites planted stuff, planted their harvest, planted their fields, before harvest time, the Midianites would come in and like destroy all their crops. It was just very frustrating. They were really holding the Israelites down, and so God heard they cried out to God and like, how are you forgetting us? Don't forget us, God. And so God raises up another judge for them. And this is kind of how it happened. And what I want to read to you about Gideon and the calling on Gideon's life. So all this is going on. The Israelites are afraid of the Midians. They're hiding in caves, right? And here we find Gideon. The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah and Elon that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite. I don't know if I said that right or not, but we'll just say close enough. Where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a wine press to keep it from the Midianites. He was threshing wheat in a wine press to keep it from the Midianites. So he was hiding, okay? Hiding. That's what he was doing. He was hiding. While he was hiding, threshing this wheat in the wine press, the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Remember, Gideon is hiding. "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "But sir," Gideon replied, "if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our father told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and put us into the hands of the Midian." The Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" But Lord, Gideon asked, "How can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and me, Lord, I am the least of my clan." So I want you to see how there's two reflections when we look in the mirror. The Lord called Gideon a mighty warrior. But what did Gideon see when he looked in the mirror? Gideon saw himself as being part of the weakest clan, and he himself as being the weakest, the least of this weakest clan. So he sees himself as this afraid man hiding in the winepress, threshing his wheat. He sees himself as this nothing, right? Yet God sees him as a mighty warrior. So I want to challenge you, when you look in the mirror today, what do you see? You know, so often it's easy to listen to the lies of the accuser. The accuser will tell us that we are nothing. He'll bring up situations, he'll put people in our path that will say and bring us down and discourage us, meaning to or not meaning to. He will say, "Remember your past. How can God use a person like you? Remember the past you have? How can you think God can use you? Or he might say, look at you, you've never done anything. You just hide in your house and you never go anywhere and you're just nothing. You're just a mom. You're just a kid. You're just a teenager. You're just a whatever. The accuser puts those things in our mind, and the accuser tells us that we're the least and we're the weakest. But God sees us different. God sees us as a mighty warrior. And I love the verse Romans 4:17. Let me find that for you. This is one of my favorite verses. It's talking about Abraham being justified by faith in Romans 4. But God, it says, Romans 4:17, God who gave life to the dead and calls things that are not as though they were. Did you see the Zonderleap behind me? There's two of them. There's another one. He calls things that are not as though they were. He saw Gideon as a mighty warrior, but Gideon did not yet see it. Gideon saw himself as the least and as the weakest, but God saw him as the mighty warrior before Gideon saw it. God sees us as mighty warriors. He sees us as vessels before we see it. He calls things in as if they were, even though they're not. And so we have to trust the voice of God. What voice are you listening today to? Are you listening to your voice in your head? Are you listening to what somebody else said about you? Are you listening to what Satan is speaking into your mind, that you're nothing, that you're no good, that you can't be used, that you're weak, that you have a past, that you're a sinner, that you don't control your temper, you don't do this or you don't do that, you are nothing, how can God use you? Are you listening to that voice? Or are you listening to the voice of God that says, I'm with you, mighty warrior? God's with us, guys. And the cool thing that God said here, go in the strength you have and save Israel. Go in the strength you have. God doesn't need strength you don't have. God's given you what you need, because you know what? God's going to meet you there. So if you can only lift 5 pounds up and you have to lift 50, God's going to lift the other 45. He said, you give me the strength you have and I'll supply what you need. You don't have to do this. It's not about, that's the thing, is it's not about us. And actually the coolest thing is if we are the weakest and the least, how great God's power is through us. It's too easy sometimes, I think, when we think we have the strength. We become a little haughty, and I did this and I did that. But the fact is we didn't do anything. It's God's power through us. He just asked us to show up. He asked us to give him the strength we have and go do what he asked us to do, because he sees us as a mighty warrior and he sees us as his vessel, and he will call into things that are not. He will call, how does that, I never can remember how it goes, but it's my favorite verse. I really need to remember it. Let me read it again. Let's see, Acts, Romans. He calls things that are not as though they were. So you might not see yourself as a mighty warrior, but he calls you a mighty warrior before you even believe it. Because you know what? He's with you. And he's your God. And he loves you. And if you're his child, you have the righteousness of Christ. And you might only have a 5-pound strength on your own, but God has enough to get you farther. God has enough to take you where he wants you to go. So if God is saying your name, Rachel, Rebecca, John, I want you to go do this, and you're sitting in there and you're thinking, I don't know, God, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, how can you ask me to do this, I'm nothing. Trust me, last weekend I was at that point. Last weekend I was struggling. I was listening to the lies of Satan. I had been kind of beaten up by somebody, and I took the words really hard, and I prayed through it, because I thought, like somebody said it, I need to reflect, I need to look, and I need to see if this is something that I need to work on. And maybe I did need to work on some things, but I was like, Satan just beat me down, and he's like, look at you, you're nothing. And I shut my mouth. I didn't speak barely at all last weekend. I prayed, and I was quiet, and I prayed, and I was quiet, and I praised as well. I couldn't speak to the people in my life. I couldn't encourage because I was really dark. I was really deep. I was feeling like nothing. I was feeling like nothing. And, you know, I think about the Psalms. A lot of times David wrote Psalms and he would be like, woe is me, I'm so wretched, I'm in so much pain, they're coming after me and I'm being attacked on left and right. And he just felt like he was in the depths of the depth. But yet, at the end of each Psalms, he would say, yet I will praise you. Yet I will praise you. So even when we're in that dark deep, we have to yet praise him, because that's our battle cry. That's how we get victory. But besides that, it's kind of a tangent, guys, sorry. I want you to see that there's two reflections in the mirror. When you look in the mirror, don't see the reflection you can see with your eyes. See the reflection that the Holy Spirit sees, that the Father sees, because you might see a person with a past, and you might see a person who's not very brave, who's not very strong, who can't face things, but God sees something else. God sees a mighty warrior. He's going to use you. Trust in the reflection that God sees. Trust in his love. Trust that he has given you the righteousness of Christ, and that your strength combined with his strength is more than you'll ever need. So give God your strength today and believe in the reflection that he sees. Don't listen to the lies of Satan that says you're nothing, that says you're not capable, because God uses things that are nothing. He uses things that are dirty. He uses things that are incapable and broken, and he makes mighty warriors out of them. So be blessed today and know God sees you as a beautiful human being that he loves. He sees you with the righteousness of Christ, and he sees you as a mighty warrior. So go, be the woman or the man of God that he sees, not the one you see. Be blessed today, guys.